webinar. We're excited to have you all here. My name is Yashvi Shah, and I will be one of your hosts today. I am a second-year student in Drexel University's BSMD program studying biology and public health. Co-hosting with me is Krina Vora.
Jai Janendra, and hello. My name is Krina Vora, and I'm a rising junior studying applied mathematics at Fordham University. We have a wonderful panel today to answer questions about college applications. For the first 45 minutes, we will have a structured Q&A. Then we will open breakout rooms where you can ask any further questions you may have directly to our panelists. If you would like to share any feedback at any time during the webinar, please use the link in the chat. This will help us improve our future programming.
Awesome. With that being said, let's get started. Panelists, would you like to please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'll start. My name is Harsha. I currently work in New York as a journalist and podcast producer, but I studied public policy at the University of Michigan and then got my master's in journalism out here in New York. But I also on the side co-founded an editing and storytelling service called HY Edit. So I'll drop the links in here for you all later. But basically, we help people with college essays, personal statements, resumes, and just anytime you'd have to tell a story. A lot of what I focus on both in my work and on the side is how do you tell like the best story possible, and how do you talk about yourself in a compelling way and in a way that communicates exactly what you want to. So I'm really excited to be on the panel and to learn from all the other panelists and answer your questions.
Hi everyone, Jai Janendra. My name is Neelam Savla, and I am here today because I work as an associate director in undergraduate admissions at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, California. I guess a little bit of background on education. I did attend USC as well for both my undergraduate and graduate degrees, and I've been working in admissions for going on 10 years now, which is kind of insane to say, but I've worked for several years with recruiting students, reading applications, and choosing which students to admit. And so very excited and happy to be here. Thank you to YJ for having us all, and excited to answer your questions.
What's up, everybody? My name is Rishabh Jain. I'm a rising fifth-year student at Georgia Tech here in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here today. I've done kind of a little bit of work with YJ in the past, but definitely excited to, share my college application process, and hopefully everyone who's attending here today kind of gets a little something out of it.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shreya. I'm a rising sophomore at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm going to be majoring in business, but specifically marketing and business analytics. I'm originally from Delaware. And yeah, I'm just really excited to get to answer your questions today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Isha. I am a rising senior at Yale, majoring in global affairs. And I've spent some time working abroad and then also recently in consulting. So happy to answer any questions that you might have about the college application process or anything else.
Awesome. Thank you all for those wonderful introductions. We're now going to go ahead and get started with the questions. So our first question today is for Shreya. What factors should I consider when choosing which colleges to apply to?
Yeah, so this is actually like a really important question, I think, especially because right now there are so many options for applicants to look at when it comes to picking your college. I would say that the most important factors to consider would be location, major, and like culture, so like the social aspect of the school. So you really want to start thinking about how far away you want your school to be. Like, would you be comfortable taking a train, taking a plane? Do you want it to be within driving distance? Like all of that, you kind of want to weigh your options there. You want to think about like what kind of area your school's in. Like, would you prefer a bigger city or like a smaller college town or somewhere in the middle? And think about what distance you personally are comfortable with, like going from home. Like personally, I only looked at schools that were within like 2 hours of home because I didn't want to like have to travel a huge distance if I like got sick or something. But then you also want to consider like the size of the school and make sure that the school itself matches your own interests academically. So you can actually check any like college admissions website to see what majors and classes the college offers and what extracurriculars, because you also want that to match your interests as well. And then when it comes to culture, what I'm talking about is like the social and that like personal aspect of the school, which could be really anything to you, but it's kind of like the feeling that you get when you are at the school and like the people there, like school spirit, like all that kind of stuff. And this can obviously vary a lot from school to school. For example, the culture of like a large state school like Penn State is super different from the culture and like the social values of like a smaller liberal arts college. And the best way to get a feel for these factors would obviously be to visit the schools. But since that isn't always an option, you can check out their social media pages and talk to current students and see if the schools are a good fit for you.
Thank you, Shreya. That was great. Our next question is for Neelam. How can I stand out in my college application?
Thanks so much, Karina. There's two pieces of advice that I'll give here. One is kind of specific to the colleges that you are choosing to apply to, kind of building off of what Shreya was just talking about. Do your research, kind of know what the school stands for and make your application kind of as personalized as possible. A lot of colleges will have their own individual short answers or essay questions that go directly to that college, which is different from the main common application essay that will go to all the colleges that you are applying to. But for anything that is going directly to the school that you are applying to, be as specific as possible. I've read thousands of essays where the short answer is just kind of talking about some school that I could plug in the name of any college out there, and it doesn't really speak and make me know that this student has done their research and really understands what USC is all about. For me as an admission counselor, I can admit, frankly, kind of whoever I want, but at the end of the day, it's you as the student who has to live there for 4 years. I'd much rather you kind of figure out, is this a school that I'm interested in? And is this somewhere where I truly want to live for 4 very important years of my life before you actually get there? And so take the time now, especially kind of while you're in high school, whether you're a senior or still junior or sophomore, kind of do your research and kind of think about not only what you want from a school, but does that school offer that? If I'm from Los Angeles, and so USC, UCLA, those are the big schools here. And more often than not, every kid grows up thinking that, oh, I have to apply to these schools. But if you're not looking for a big school in a big city, it doesn't make sense to apply to these schools, right? And so think about, what are you looking for and does that school offer it? And personalize and make as specific as possible your applications to those schools. The second piece of advice I'll give is kind of more for yourself, and this can apply to any college you're applying to, is tell us about yourself. And I know this is going to tie into some things that Harsha was talking about, of telling your story. If you don't tell me your story, I won't know, right? I'm not psychic, unfortunately. I don't get the chance to meet every single applicant out there. But if you don't tell us about yourself and tell us what is important to you and kind of knowing who you are, admission officers are not going to know about that information. We have been raised, and particularly probably in our Jain faith, we've been raised to be humble and to not brag about ourselves. If there is a time to brag about yourself, it is now. In the college application process, think about all of the things that make you who you are and make sure that you put them in the application. Because again, I can't stress this enough. If you don't tell us, we won't know. And so this is your chance to really kind of share your story and tell us kind of, why are you so awesome and why should we choose you and admit you to X, Y, and Z college.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Neelam. Moving on to our next question. Sometimes we make mistakes through the application process or even on the application itself without realizing. Isha, what are some common mistakes that applicants may make?
I think that it would definitely just be like not being true to yourself. I would always just like suggest that as long as you are as genuine of a person as you are, instead of like writing what you think an admissions officer should be saying, that'd be like my big advice, is just that like every school like wants to admit you, and you want to be in a place that accepts you too, or that you accept as well, and it's sort of like a mutual fit. So I would just suggest that you try to be as true to yourself as possible.
Would anyone else like to add anything? Thank you, Isha. Oh, Rishabh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I can pop in real quick. This is sometimes just like a clerical thing that people do, but I think Neelam kind of talked about it, where if you have one essay that you're submitting to a large number of colleges, and I've seen this happen with a couple of my friends, is, they'll be applying to Duke, but they'll copy and paste an essay that they wrote for UNC. And so then they will submit an essay to Duke that says, this is why I want to go to UNC. And I can only imagine that the admissions counselor on the other side is reading that and says, okay, I'll make your dream a reality so you won't be coming to Duke. So whenever you're, putting all of this time and effort into an application, double checking everything. Something I do, and whenever I write anything, is you read it out loud to yourself, make sure there's no grammar, spelling, or any major errors like that, and make sure that everything you have is lined up, not an hour before the application is due, maybe like a day or 2 days before, so you have that time to correct anything if you see something that's, a really glaring error that you need to fix beforehand.
Thank you, Rishabh. And I know you kind of touched on it, but to add to that, Harsha, based on your background and experience, could you talk about common mistakes applicants can make on essays?
Yeah, definitely. So I feel like everyone has said such great things so far, and a lot of them can actually apply to your essay portion. So through our organization HY Edits, like I've read probably like hundreds of college essays at this point, and I've worked like one-on-one with people to try to figure out like exactly what they're trying to say in the essay. And it always starts with this question of like, okay, like what is the most true thing to yourself? Like I think a lot of times people will ask like, oh, which prompt should I answer? Or like, is there better like especially on the Common App, like is there a particular prompt that like admissions officers really like to see? Or is there a particular story I should tell? And we always end up starting with like let's just like free write, let's brainstorm like everything that's had maybe some type of emotional impact or like developmental impact in your life, and see like what you authentically feel most excited to talk about. So like it really is like this idea of being true to yourself, like really transfers into your essays. And then I'll kind of piggyback off of what Rishabh said. So in addition to making sure you have like the right college name on some of the specific essays, I have noticed, especially recently and like on supplementals, it seems like colleges are asking the same prompt, but they will word a prompt slightly differently. So like a lot of colleges will we'll have some type of diversity essay, but if you notice, like that essay might, like the actual prompt of the essay might have a little bit of a different sort of focus based on the college, right? So sometimes they'll be like, oh, what is a community you feel like you are part of or you feel strongly about and why? Another college might ask a similar thing, but be like, what is a unique perspective you would bring to campus? And they seem like they're the same essay, and you can definitely use parts, but I would be cognizant that like they're different questions. So you want to make sure, however you are repurposing essays, you're repurposing them to the actual question that is being asked, because when we are doing a lot of applications, you definitely will have to pull stories and parts from different things you've already written, but I think colleges will like be a little nuanced in wording sometimes. And then I won't take up too much more time, and we can follow up in some of the breakout sessions, but I have like a little list of like writing mistakes I see often. And these are in college essays. Also, I think anytime you're writing like a cover letter, a personal statement, or honestly, anytime you're sort of trying to like communicate a story, something that I've been told by some writing professors and journalism professors is that people will often sort of like tee up, like people end up trying to feel like we end up feeling like we have to like set a lot of context, we have to like describe a whole situation. You sort of like it's like similar to like, I don't play baseball at all, but like the analogy I've heard is like it's like you're like teeing up and you're like warming up and you're like standing at the plate, and like I've had so many professors just be like, just swing. Like I've read so many essays where I could delete like the first paragraph and a half of a draft, and that's where your actual story will start. And so when you have like a really tight word count, a lot of times you can sort of just like dive in, and then later you can reread and decide like what needs to be explained. But a lot of times you don't have to do so much context setting. And then the second big thing that I often hear, and especially see in college essays, is active versus passive voice. I'm going to be honest, I never understood active versus passive voice in like my high school English classes. at all. But I think this might hopefully help people understand what it is. But a lot of times, especially when you're like answering a like why this school essay, so kind of what Neelam was talking about, I will see a lot of people write the sentence sort of like, this program will offer me the opportunity to do X, Y, and Z. Or like at your school, the XYZ major program will offer me this. And that sentence is written in a very passive way. Like you are receiving what is happening to you. And it's like such a simple rephrasing. You can literally just be like, at this program, I am excited to do X, Y, and Z. And you can like have sort of the same things that you say, but you sort of switch it and you like, I don't know if you heard the difference even when I changed it, but you like are a more active person in that sentence, and it draws attention to you and what you would basically bring to a space. And then the last thing I will say is that almost always, if you can delete a sentence and not miss it, you probably don't need that sentence. I've heard a lot of people often, like I've seen a lot of people write like this will like, I'm excited to like explore a wealth of opportunities, and like that's a whole sentence, and then they will like say what those opportunities are. And I always say like specificity is key. If like those words could be taken out and I still like, and it doesn't change the meaning, like I don't want to know that you're excited to explore a wealth of opportunities. I want to know what those opportunities are, and you can just be specific. Like a silly example, like people will be like I don't know, I'm like literally just thinking off the top of my head, but like, I don't know, if I went to the beach, I'd be like, oh, I like got dressed and went to the beach. And like, that's a pretty standard sentence. But if you were like, I put on my khaki pants and like a blue collared shirt and went to the beach on a rainy day with like, it's just the more specific you are, it's this weird thing I think about like human storytelling and connection. People just like feel like they're in this space with you, and they remember you, and they remember these parts about your life, just because I think that specificity like somehow ties to like our authenticity too. So wherever you can, lots of details are not necessarily a bad thing. And yeah, those are my big ones.
Wow, Harsha, thank you so much. That was really insightful. Next, we have, when applying to college, it's easy to get overwhelmed by a lot of applications for different places all at once. Rishabh, how many colleges should I be applying to? How many safeties, targets, reaches, etc.?
Okay, so this is a bit of a loaded question, so I'm going to break it down. So firstly, for anyone who's not really familiar with the college admissions terminology, so the schools you're going to be applying to go into 3 categories. So the first category are your safety schools. These are schools that you, looking at your application package, your test scores, your grades, feel that you can really comfortably get into. These are schools with larger acceptance rates, usually, not always, bigger student populations and things like that. Your second category is target schools. Sometimes I've also heard them called like match schools. So these are schools where you're not necessarily guaranteed to get in, but you know, with a little bit of work on your application and stuff like that, you think you have a pretty good shot at getting in. And then your third category are reach schools. Sometimes they're called dream schools. And that's exactly what they are, you know, schools with typically lower acceptance rates. And if you put in, you know, a lot of work and, you know, really get good recommendations and get good grades and have a really well-rounded application, and then also get that little bit of luck, you'll make it in that category. So, you know, I think one of the biggest things with this question is there is no magic number. I know some people who have applied to 5 schools and they got into the one that they wanted to go to and they went there. I know some people who, you know, really went overboard and applied to over 20 schools. Personally, I made sure that I had multiple schools in each of those categories. So I think when I applied to 11 schools total. I had 2 safeties, 5 target schools, and 4 reach or dream schools. And so kind of in that mix, what you want to make sure of is any of those colleges that you get accepted to, you should feel comfortable saying, hey, I'm okay going to this school. You don't want to apply to a school, end up getting in, and then say, if that's my only one, I don't want to go there. So be comfortable with applying to schools that you know you will eventually want to go to if that's your only option. And also understand that even with some safety schools or some target schools, nothing is guaranteed in the college admissions process. You can have a great application and a school that you thought you were 100% in may reject you because they think you're going to go somewhere else. So I guess the biggest answer is, I can't throw a number on a dartboard and say, that many colleges, but always have multiple options in each of those categories, anywhere from 2 to 5, depending on how you feel about it for each category. But just make sure that you're able to put a solid amount of effort in every single application. And so you don't want to spread yourself too thin, but you want to make sure you have backup options. So you kind of have to look at what you're coming in with, where you want to be, what kind of schools you're applying to, and kind of balance those 3 categories accordingly.
Great advice. Thank you, Rishabh. I know we had a few more people that wanted to add to this. So Neelam and then Harsha.
Yeah, what Rishabh said, it's a loaded question. I'm just going to add a couple more things there is no right answer. I would strongly encourage you to not look for a number that someone else tells you, but really think about what you can do. I think what Rishabh said is really important you don't want to just apply to dozens of schools and kind of submit kind of applications that you really didn't put a lot of effort into, because that's frankly a waste of your time and a waste of the admission officer's time. You really do want to put together well-developed applications. But thinking about it from a mental health perspective, you are going to be a senior in high school. Senior year is extremely busy. There's a lot of things that are happening, the least of which is a global pandemic, which is still happening. And so those of you who are rising seniors right now, really think about kind of what you can manage, and don't push yourself just because the person next to you is applying to 20 colleges, but think about what you can kind of reasonably do without killing yourself. And then the second thing I'll mention is, and this goes back to kind of the having different schools in those different categories and doing your research. There are nearly 4,000 colleges that offer degrees in the United States. And traditionally, kind of the college going population, and I think particularly the South Asian population, focuses on the top 50, 100, 150, right? Like there's the same name schools that we see over and over and over again. And I'm guilty of that. I went to one of those schools and I work at one of those schools. College admissions is getting more and more competitive, and it's frankly not getting any easier to be admitted to colleges. And that's just unfortunately the reality of where we stand and what higher education is like in the United States. So really take the time to do your research and think about schools that are a good fit for you. Maybe it's not that brand name school that every auntie and uncle wants you to go to, but really offers the types of programs that you want and the type of community and culture that Shreya was talking about earlier that you are looking for in a college, because more likely than not, there are dozens of schools that maybe you've never heard of that offer exactly what you're looking for in a college. And if you take the time to do that research and kind of look for those options, you might find a really great fit for you that maybe you might not have thought about before.
Yeah, I echo all of that. And I think especially the part that you just said, Neelam, about mental health is like so important. And the only thing I'm going to add is I for so much of my life was like a chronic over applier, like for colleges, for internships. But recently, and I think just like over time have learned that like the actual like essay process too, like you can use that and it can be a reflective process. And I think it's something that holds true whether you're like applying for jobs, applying for internships, applying for college. Like part of the reason places ask you to write this supplemental essay that's like, why do you want to come here? Is to like also force you to reflect on like why you want to go on that, like why you would want to go to that school. And something that has been true for me over and over again is like if I sit down to like think through that essay, and maybe not like on a day that like consistently over time, if I'm like sitting there and I'm like staring at my computer screen and I'm like, I can't write this like why do I want to be here essay, like I just don't have anything to say, or like I can't think of something, and like I've tried and I'm just not feeling inspired, like that I feel like is your body and your heart telling you something, and it's okay to listen to it. And like, yes, there will be certain schools that are maybe like safety schools or schools that you feel like you should apply to. But genuinely, if you are like for days on end, like dreading writing this essay about why you want to go to a particular school, it's also okay to take a step back and be like, wait, like, do I want to go to this school? And I think giving yourself permission to be like, it's okay if I don't. And I hope you'll feel the difference too. Like I've noticed it when I'm really excited about something, and when I was really excited about a school, it was like I wanted to do the research and I wanted to learn about all of their programs and I wanted to know who all the professors were, or who all like I could take classes with or what the clubs were. And then there were certain schools where like for no fault of my own or of the school, I was just kind of like, meh, like it's nice, but I don't know if I need to know more about it. And so definitely, I think the last thing I say is like, listen to yourself when that happens.
More great advice. Thank you, Harsha and Neela. Moving on to our next topic. There are different options when applying to college. There's early decision, early action, regular decision, to name a few. Neelam, can you explain a little bit more about what each of these are and how to decide whether to apply early decision, early action, or regular decision?
Yeah, that's a really good question. At the core, these three options are basically three different application deadline types. So they will likely have different due dates. As you can imagine, early decision and early action will have earlier deadlines. And so if kind of at the very basic level, if you are ready to roll and you can get applications in early decision, early action kind of are things that may be of interest to you. Now, to kind of separate between the three, early decision is typically an application deadline that for a lot of schools, November 1st, November 15th is kind of around when they'll have deadlines. But the stipulation is that you apply early, you find out a decision early, and ideally, kind of if you are admitted, you are committing to attend that school. Now, you can get into a lot of nuances here. Some schools have restrictive kind of application types where the kind of idea is that you can only apply to one school early. But essentially, in terms of kind of figuring out if I should apply early decision, if it is your number one school choice, and if you were admitted today, you would attend with no questions asked, you can consider applying early decision. Now, the no questions asked thing is big because this also includes finances. If you are ready to commit to the school without knowing how much financial aid or scholarships you may receive, then yeah, I would recommend go ahead and apply early decision. You can get into the weeds of data, but frankly, a lot of colleges that have early decision, early action, their admission rates for those early programs tend to be a little bit higher than kind of general, kind of regular admission. So yeah, if you apply early, you do have a better chance likely of getting in. But again, there should be no questions. It shouldn't be oh, well, I will go if they give me scholarships, or I will go if I get into this particular kind of honors program. If you are admitted, you are committing to going to that school if you are admitted early decision. Now, if that's exciting, that's great. If that is a little stressful, early action might be a better fit for you. Early action is essentially where you also apply early and you find out a decision earlier than most, but you're not bound to anything. You are not tied to saying yes to the school. It just gives you kind of more time to kind of make a decision and you find out your decision earlier. Again, with the nuances, some schools have restrictive early action where if you are applying to a school restrictive early action, you cannot apply to a second school early action. So you're not supposed to be applying to like 10 colleges early just so you can find out decisions earlier. Now, regular decision is kind of what it sounds like. It's just regular. There's no kind of stipulations that are attached. There's no additional kind of requirements. I will say, and I say this particularly because my school is like this, that there's still additional different types of deadlines. Like there can be scholarship deadlines, which are not early decision, that are not early action. But if you apply by a certain date, you can be considered for free money. And there's different kind of things that come into play with each college. And so I keep saying this over and over again, but my best advice is to do the research on the schools that you are interested in, figure out what their deadlines are. I would recommend having a spreadsheet where you can kind of have the different columns of like, okay, here are the 10, 15 schools I'm interested in. Here are the deadlines. Here is if they have early action or early decision. Here is the scholarship deadline. Here are these other kind of things that I'm interested in. But when it comes to kind of making a decision of which type of application deadline to apply by, I think it's a bit of a kind of personal choice, right? Of, am I committing to attend this school, no questions asked? Do I just want to kind of know earlier if I'm going to get into this school? I will also note that particularly for early decision and early action, the kind of possibilities of what you get in return is either you are admitted, you are deferred, which means that you're not being admitted, but you're not being denied. You're just kind of being moved to the next round, and they still are going to consider you kind of in the regular pool. Or in some colleges, they have the option to deny students with that early decision or early action round. So there's a lot of nuances. Again, 4,000 colleges, every college kind of does things slightly differently. It's really important to kind of know the specifics of what the schools that you are applying to have, because everyone might have slightly different kind of rules, but hopefully that helps for a little bit of a primer.
Thank you, Neelam. Rishabh, did you want to add to this as well?
Yeah, so I think Neelam kind of touched on what I was going to say with like making a spreadsheet and things like that. One thing that sort of took me by surprise when I was going through the application process is I only applied to one school, early action. But the thing about that is, as Neelam said, it's early action. And so those deadlines come before your regular decision deadlines. Sometimes you'll have some early decision or early actions that happen in the middle of October is when you have to submit your application. Whereas regular decision will be sometimes late December or even as late as early January. And so one thing that you want to remember is that if you're filling out essays or filling out prompts for your common application, those are going to have to be done before your earliest deadline, whatever that may be, if it's an early decision, if it's an early action, or if it's a really early regular decision. So you want to make sure that if you do decide, hey, I want to apply to this college early decision, or I want to apply to this college early action, you want to make sure that you plan out exactly, in the number of colleges that you're applying, what needs to come first. Obviously your common application and then the essays for that early decision or early action. And then maybe after, once that application deadline has passed, then you sort through what you have to do for regular decision. So you want to make sure that, yes, you are making this decision, or yes, you are putting yourself out there earlier, that you want to make sure that you have that sorted in advance. And one other thing I want to quickly touch on, I know we talked a little bit about, mental health in the college application process early on. If you do an early decision or early action, not only will you submit your applications earlier, but you'll get decisions back earlier. Sometimes you'll get decisions before other people have submitted applications. And if you get in, that's awesome. Like you have that settled and that sort of thing. But getting deferred or rejected early, it can sometimes be a damper and make you feel like you've been invalidated early on in the process. That shouldn't be that. You shouldn't feel that way. Like that shouldn't be the case for you. It's difficult to kind of wrap your head around this, but just because you applied early and this maybe didn't get the result you wanted early doesn't mean you're out for the count for the whole admissions process, right? There are many more deadlines, there are many more applications left to do. And so getting that early victory, it's awesome, but taking an early hit doesn't necessarily mean you're completely knocked out for the entire admission season. So keeping that long game in mind and making sure if this doesn't come through, there are other things down the line. Keeping that in your head will definitely help throughout the entire process.
Great. Thank you, Rishabh. Our next question goes to Harsha. College is an important financial decision. Scholarships are a great way to get financial support for your college career. How do I apply for scholarships? Is it separate from applying to the school? Will I need to write extra essays?
Yeah, this is a great question because I think college is becoming increasingly expensive, and it's a huge financial decision. I know there's definitely financial aid and work study. I'm not as familiar with what the FAFSA requirements are right now, but there are a lot of different avenues to think through finances when you're thinking about college, and scholarships are definitely one of them. There's a few different ways. I mean, I think there are a lot of schools that sometimes will in your application process also start to put applications that are applicable for certain scholarships. So I think when I was an undergrad and for a couple of my friends, there were certain scholarships that our applications were forwarded onto through the school. And so sometimes that will happen with just your common app. I didn't have to do anything, but that was a very small subset of things. And then there's so many different types of scholarships out there. I feel there are things that are done based on academic standing or test scores sometimes. There's also stuff that yes, you definitely do have to write essays for. There's stuff that companies or organizations community foundations will do. So it's definitely like a whole other process separate from applying. I think a good place to start is first to just know what is out there. So there are a ton of sites. I think College Board has a site. There's like Scholarly or scholarship.com. There's like sites that'll let you fill in certain information to see what you might be eligible for, because again, there are scholarships that are like really specific maybe to like a field or a major or like a particular type of fellowship. I would also like, when you are reaching out to students at a school or like former current students or admissions officers, I feel like especially at certain schools that come with high price tags, like it's always good to ask like, what do people generally do? And I think sometimes it's a combination of like, they'll offer what options they have for work study or RAing or financial aid, or like if there are fellowships or scholarships that you can do. And then in terms of the rest, the essays, I think the thing that I would say is I would treat it as like you're almost doing like the essay writing process again, right? Because a lot of the scholarships are going to have specific prompts if they are essay ones, right? And sometimes that might be like, if it's a local like community foundation, they're going to ask you a question that is based on like maybe what the values of that foundation are and how you like would be able to like be in line with that. If it's a company or an organization, sometimes it'll be like directed towards sort of their mission. And so I think the biggest thing I've noticed is that when it comes to essays in general, the more authentic something feels, the more it like resonates with people. And the way that you get to that authenticity is by tailoring things to the specific opportunities. So I would just say like the whole process of applying for scholarships to get the best yield and like to get the best like almost like value of the time you're putting in, because this is like extra time on top of like an entire applications process that you've already gone through, is again like knowing what your capacity is for how many of these maybe like additional applications or essays you can do, and making sure that the ones that you do, you're like intentional about picking. Because again, if you don't feel like you have the mental or like emotional capacity to write another essay, or you're just like really tired, which is very, very real after the application process, or you like think it might be a good fit, but maybe it isn't, like if you're doing it for the sake of doing it, it might also not be that effective. And so I think that's definitely something to think about. And then in terms of the essays themselves, I think sometimes when we want to like have a lasting impact, we feel like we have to like throw in as much as possible into an essay. And I think I've definitely like seen this with like scholarship essays, because sometimes they're like less specific to like the program or the school or whatever, right? And so there's this feeling that like I have to tell them as much as I can about myself, because like I have to like leave this impact. And I think the strongest essays are ones that have like one or two ideas, and it's just like your main idea has to be like something you could almost say in a sentence, because that is like then you build everything around it. Like you have one thread to your story, and you're picking like one like experience, one formative moment, one reflection, and then you can build a whole story around it. But like you never want to just like sort of like relist everything you're involved in, or like relist your like resume, or like relist every single thing that's happened to you. And I think scholarship essays, not all of them, but some I've noticed are like usually sometimes shorter, or they'll have multiple short prompts. So like I would really think like when you're doing that, like try to like narrow things down into like one idea. And yeah, I think that's kind of the big stuff. I don't know if anyone has anything to add on how to find scholarships.
Great, thank you, Harsha. Isha, did you want to add to this?
Yeah, I also just wanted to add like financial aid is definitely an option for some of the schools too. And so, for example, like some schools have need blind like financial aid. So you like basically apply separately from, or you like apply as you apply to the school, and you like fill out the FAFSA. And so, for example, I know some people at Yale who are on like full financial aid, and so they're not paying anything to come to Yale, and it's like grant based. And at the same, so that's like not a financial burden for their families. And they can end up sending them to a school that like their child wanted to go to. And for some people, it's actually cheaper than like going to their local state school, just to make it like much more affordable and to make it an option for them. And so a lot of schools like have that information right on their website, and you can just click on the financial aid tab, but that's also an option in addition to scholarships as well. And so just one that I would recommend that people look into.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So moving on, there's a lot of things to consider during the application process. So turning to something a little bit more actionable, Shreya, what should my priorities be in terms of the application right now?
Yeah, so like when you're, no matter where you are kind of like in this process, like if you're an underclassman in high school, you're going to be a senior. When you're just thinking about your application, obviously the number one answer that you expect is academics. But within that, there's like a few things that I think you should focus on more specifically. So like besides your letter grades and studying your classes, which I know everyone's already doing, for those of you that this still applies to, make sure that you're preparing for the SAT and your AP exams. AP exams, like for me, were not something I really thought about like too much when I was in high school. I was like, oh, everyone just like do this, and like doesn't really matter that much. But I definitely wish that like I had started thinking about them earlier, because AP test scores can get you out of a ton of course requirements your freshman year and like even beyond, depending on what school you end up at. So this is something that you can check online on any school like admissions website, and you can see what scores and what AP courses your school gives credit for, and this can vary a lot. So knowing this information can help you decide what AP courses to take while you're still picking your classes in high school. And if you're a senior this year, this information can help you a lot, since this is like your like crunch time for getting AP credit in before you go to college. So definitely do this research on your schools, see what scores they each accept. If you're not going to be a senior year, I'd recommend you still do this research, but don't let what you see like define your schedule too much, because the schools that you may want to go to right now might not be the same ones that you want to go to your senior summer. And so get a good feel for what credit is accepted at most schools, but don't let that change your mind totally, because that could totally change over the next few years. And then outside of academics, you should also start looking at your extracurriculars more closely. And this includes like volunteering, like part-time jobs, things you do at school, sports, like any of that stuff counts for this. And I know that for a lot of us, when we first got to school, signing up for every single club and every single sport seemed like a good way to get involved. But this isn't actually going to help you on your application. You want to choose a few good activities that you're actually passionate about to show your dedication and like your interest as a student, and get more involved in the activities that you actually enjoy, because then your passion will translate over in your application when you're writing about these things. In addition to this, I also know that many of you guys might be stressing out about the essays that you have to write, which we mentioned before. So like whether this is like the Common App essay or like your supplementals that you have for certain schools, if you're not applying to college this year, don't worry, don't stress about this yet, because you're going to want like the future perspective that you have when you're going to be a senior to help you write this when the time comes. But if you are beginning to write these essays now, I would recommend that you, like we've been saying, do your research on the schools you're applying to and start brainstorming some ideas for your main essay. And when you're writing your supplementals, like I know like so many of us said this today, but you really want to seem like you know the school. Even if you haven't been there physically, you want to write from like an educated perspective, so that the school feels like you actually want to go there. And even if you are a senior, you still have a ton of time to write your essays. Like it's only August and you have so many months. It doesn't hurt to like start the thought process, because that can only help you later.
That was really awesome. Thanks, Shreya. Harsha, did you want to add to this as well?
Yeah, I mean, Shreya really covered it. I'll just like throw in a quick thing on essays, because I think essay timing is really difficult sometimes, because exactly what Shreya said, like you don't want to write your essays too early. Like you're gonna grow as a person, you're gonna have different experiences. Also, though, like and so that's like really important. And then like the flip is too, like you'll start senior year, and you'll like be doing all the school stuff. You'll be trying to like make sure you have all your test scores, all your rec letters, all your like extracurriculars. So you also don't want your essays to be an afterthought. And so I think there's like a really weird, like there's like this like prime window of time to work on your essays. And I think that'll differ for everyone. Like places have staggered deadlines. If you're not applying early, sometimes the like deadlines are later in the fall. If you're applying early, like they're sometimes earlier, like October and November. I'll just say for essays, try to give yourself, I think for your Common App essay, at least like a solid month. And that's not like, oh, a month where like I'll think about it one day and then I'll like not think about it for 2 weeks and I'll think about it again. Like a month of like feeling like it's an assignment that you're like consistently doing, and that'll vary for people too. Like I think that depends sort of on how you like to work and how you like to do storytelling, like how you like to like tap into that creative side of you. But I say that because I've had so many people come to us and like we'll go through different phases with HY edits. Like sometimes we'll just do like brainstorming with you, and that's sort of like a more early, like fun, conversational, like who are you, we're getting to know you part. And then when we get into the essays, like we'll have like drafts of essays that we're trying to go through with people like sentence by sentence, word by word. And I feel so bad because I've gotten essays that are like 3 days before the deadline, and I will look at the draft and I will be like, oh my gosh, I want to help you make this better, but I can't give you all the feedback I want to give you right now without overwhelming you. Like, it is so hard to receive stuff like that, like the week that you're trying to submit something, because you're kind of like, oh my God, like, do I have to start from scratch? Like, what, like, right? And so both the process of like just give yourself like set yourself up for success. Like, give yourself time to know that like it's partially a creative thing. Like, you can't just like crank out an essay in a night. Like, you want to be thoughtful about like what you're writing about. Like, you want to be thoughtful about your experiences, you want to be thoughtful about how you're structuring it and how you're telling the story. And so just like let yourself breathe in that as much as you can. And then when you are sending essays out for review, give yourself ample time to be able to receive the feedback and have to take and incorporate it, because it's definitely something that I think in the like hustle and bustle of everything that you have to do for colleges can get put off. And then the last week I've seen be really, really stressful for people. And I don't wish that upon any of you.
Thanks, Harsha. Our next question is for Rishabh, and it's a little bit more specific. Do you think it's better to apply undecided or to choose a major and then switch later? Also, does the major you select determine the career choices available to you?
So the quick and easy answer to both of those is it depends, but I'll kind of break down that first one about whether you should apply undecided or choose a major. So just for a little bit of background, so I'm here at Georgia Tech. I'm a material science major and a public policy minor. And so that seems like a very niche track. And the reason I got into material science is because I did a research project in high school, found out that what I was doing is material science, and then kind of wanted to pursue that going forward. But I know there are probably a lot of you out there who, are looking at college applications saying, I don't know what I want to do yet. You may have a subject you really like in high school. You may have a subject you really don't like. You may have multiple subjects that you think you're pretty good at, and you're not really sure where it narrows into a college major. Let me just tell you right now, that's perfectly fine. Not everyone has to go into their college career knowing that that's what they want to end up doing in life. That being said, every school has a bit of a different process on how they handle people applying undecided or people applying with different majors coming in. I know there are a lot of people who try to game the system, and if you're going to a school with a really big mechanical engineering program, a lot of times schools will only accept a certain number of students who list mechanical engineering as their top major. So what some students will do is they'll say, oh yeah, I'm going to put down agriculture as my major, and then upon entry into this university, if I get in, I will switch my major in the first semester. It's not always that easy. Some universities have you jump through a lot of hoops to try to switch your major. And if you wanted to be a mechanical engineer and you're stuck as an agriculture major for 4 years, it's not going to be the college experience you want. So one thing that may help you is if you're thinking about applying undecided, or if you're thinking about applying for a major, but you're staying flexible with it, take a look at the different academic handbooks or the different guidelines that some of the universities you're applying to have. You want to make sure that if you apply somewhere and you want that flexibility, that university is willing to give it to you. There are some places, and I think there are very few of them, that once you apply and you choose a major, you're stuck with it. And so if you go to a place like that and you pick a major and you want to change it, you're in a bit of a sticky situation. So yeah, I personally really enjoy my major. I really enjoy material science. I came in with it, really excited to learn about it. And over 4 and now almost 4.5 years, I've enjoyed all that I've learned about it. That's not the case with everyone. And a lot of people will have different ideas. And so if you want that flexibility, make sure you're looking at places that are willing to give it to you or are willing to work with you on that sort of thing. To the second part of the question about majors determining career choices, again, it really depends on which major. There are some majors where once you start in that major, there are opportunities that come your way very easily because they are very widely available. And those types of companies or those types of industries that are looking for people in your major will be looking at your university or in your major. There are some majors where you really have to seek those opportunities out on your own and they may not necessarily come to you, or you may have to almost design what career path you want to take. So I would highly recommend against picking a major just because it may be easier to get a job in the future. If it's something that you pick that you want to do, that's great. If it's something you pick because you think you'll make a lot of money, but you may not enjoy the work, you may want to rethink how you're plotting through that. And so, considering what you want to do and where you think you can find opportunities are definitely the biggest things when it comes to picking a major, but also considering when you exit your university, what kind of options will be there for you.
Thanks, Rishabh. That was really helpful. Our last structured question is for Isha. Do all colleges offer an interview to applicants? How should I prepare for an interview if I do receive one?
I don't know about all colleges. I can only speak to the ones that I'm familiar with, but many colleges do offer an interview, and they all are for really different reasons. I remember that a lot of the schools that I was applying to, the interview was pretty informational. They didn't have a super high impact on your application. I know for some schools, the interview does have a higher impact, but for the ones that I remember that I applied to, it was more of just you're chatting with an alum from the school, and you can ask them questions about what the school is like. They ask you a couple questions about yourself. They write a report or something about you, and they send it to the admissions office. And then from there, maybe it has an impact. I remember that for some schools, it really is a bit negligible. My advice though is to be personable and nice and show that you're a good person, because if you maybe really kind of are difficult during the interview or unfriendly, that could just be a red flag for them. So my advice is just be happy, excited about the school, don't use the wrong name of another school. Just talk about your passions, be genuine, and just try to represent yourself to the best ability that you can. And then I think that that can only help you in an interview. I know for some schools, the interview means that you, I don't know if I froze for a second. The interview means that you maybe it's sort of an invitation. And that's sort of evolving, especially with the COVID pandemic, because that means not everybody is available to do it. Every school has enough people to give interviews. But I think from my experience, and likely as hopefully COVID starts to subside a bit, that most of these are just informational, but definitely just be as genuine and kind of a person as you can.
Thanks, Isha. That concludes our structured Q&A portion of the webinar. Before we move into breakout rooms, we would like to give a huge thank you to all 5 of our panelists for this amazing session. We all hope this portion of the webinar was informative and helpful as you all are beginning or going through the college application process.
Perfect. So the second portion of this event is going to be an open Q&A. There's going to be 5 breakout rooms, 1 for each panelist. You can jump around to whichever breakout room you want to get your questions answered. Please make sure to wait your turn to ask your question once you do join a breakout room. To select your breakout room, you should see a button at the bottom of your screen in a few minutes. Click on that and you will be able to move around. You should be able to move around between breakout rooms once you join one as well. Feel free to stick around in this main room if you have any logistical questions, or if you would like us to manually put you into a breakout room. Also, you're welcome to leave once you have finished asking all of your questions. So Shreya will be in room 1, Rishabh will be in room 2, Harsha will be in room 3, Neelam will be in room 4, and Isha will be in room 5. Again, you should be able to join breakout room from the bottom of your screen. and you should be able to move around to breakout rooms as well.
Thank you all for joining, and we hope you stay for the breakout room portion. Before you leave, there will be a feedback form that we're going to send in the chat, or you can just scan the QR code on the screen so we can have suggestions to improve next year. Good luck with college apps, everyone.